Welcome everybody, and welcome to Napthan's Brief Conversations with me, Jamie Allison. I run our Cumbrian operation out of our Kendal hub, and I'm the head of real estate across the group. This morning, I've got some really good guests and fantastic contributors from the Cumbria leisure sector, and they include Gill Haigh, who's the Managing Director of Cumbria Tourism, Sam Ward, who's the Managing Director of Umbel Restaurant Group, which Long Clume sits within, amongst a whole host of other things that Simon Rogan's been very successful with. We've got Ben Berry, who is third generation in the Berry family, who own 6 hotels of distinct quality in the Lake District at English Lakes Hotels and Resorts. And I've got a professional colleague in Colin Johnson, who is a partner at Moore and Smalley and specialises in leisure. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
We've got some questions that we're going to table to form the basis of a discussion, bearing in mind what we've experienced over the last 6 months and your views in terms of how the industry is faring and weathering in all of this. So I'll kick off with the first one, if I may, and that's as follows. What businesses do we think, what do they have in place to weather this 6 months? And what are we actually seeing? And what do you think they need? And I'll pose that question first of all to Sam, please.
Well, thank you very much, Jamie, and thanks to everyone for having me here today. I'm on a very rare day off, which the past few months they have been rarer and rarer, I must admit. So if my dog screams and shouts in the background, that's just a good thing. But I apologise in advance. So I think that the first thing to say is we're now, we've gone through the first battle. We've come out of it with a few scars, and we've learned a few things. So the good news is we don't have the same level of unknown. I think that's what was so scary back in March. Like, what are we doing? What's the right decision? There are no case studies to follow. We cannot look at any other country's journey throughout this COVID because everyone's had a different journey depending on the government that they sort of are ruled by. At least now we are, and should be by now, used to being able to react quickly. And I think that's the key thing, that we have to be at the moment like boxers on their tiptoes, ready to change. The hard thing, of course, is, like I say, most businesses have already gone through a few battles, so are probably feeling a little bit sort of battle tired, I would say. And that's certainly, I think, where we are as a company. We have worked very hard. I'm so proud of what everyone's done. But we're all, feeling it now, and it will be impossible to say that we're not. So for me, I think I'll happily talk about some of the practical measures in hospitality, but just as far as managing your company, it doesn't matter what industry it is. I think looking after the people in it, because just before we came on live on the recording here, Jill, you mentioned something about how some other people that you've met have found it tough, and I think that's okay. And I think that's the big message we're trying to send through to our company at the moment. It's okay if you are feeling a little bit unsure at the moment, if you're hurting, because we all are. We don't know what to expect. So things that we've tried to do is, although it's been hard, ensure people are taking time off, holidays and things like that, just time to rest their brains. The management team needed time. We forced everyone to take some time. So that's something that was important for us, looking after the people. But as far as specific measures go, we followed the government guidance on what to do in hospitality. We didn't really make any huge changes recently when they brought out all the new rules, because we'd already been doing that since day one. We were quite lucky in the fact that we have a business in Hong Kong that started its battle against COVID much earlier in January, and although the country handled it better, our restaurant, we were temperature checking people when they were arriving. We were not allowing relays on tables because that's going to cause too much conflict in cleaning, things like that. So we were already doing that from when we opened. And then the other thing is, and I think I can probably got a similar journey, but Ben, you maybe have a different view on this, I don't know, but when we went into lockdown in March, it was the worst time of year for a hospitality business in the Lake District, in my opinion, to go into lockdown from a financial position, whereas the past few months have been pretty strong. And so I would suggest that one of the key things is not to be frivolous with that, and to stockpile and prepare ourselves for what could potentially be a lousy winter, or could be a busy one. We don't know.
Yeah, just to add a few comments then. I think a lot of businesses, I think as Sam alluded early on in the conversation, we went into this and nobody really knew what was going to happen. The CBILS loans and the bounce back loans that were put in place were very helpful. I think, you know, there was problems with getting hold of both of them to start with, but in the end, I think a lot of people got where they wanted to with that. I think businesses have probably performed better in many cases than a lot of people had predicted, and a lot of businesses are now probably still sitting on a reasonable amount, if not all in some cases, of some of the money that they borrowed. So people, and then obviously the summer period, I think has generally been quite strong. So I think people are probably going into the winter, and this is obviously a generalism, in a relatively strong position. But who knows what's going to be thrown at us over the next 6 months.
I think we've seen varying degrees of what people have got and not got, and I think fortunately or unfortunately, time will tell. One thing I do see quite a lot, and I've really enjoyed seeing this from our client base, is diversification, and that's how people have diversified. What have you guys seen in terms of innovative practices and what's working in terms of that adjustment given the pandemic? Gill, you'll have a very wide lens on the county, on leisure operators. What have you seen in terms of effective diversification or innovation?
I think, you know, right from the very start, you know, Sam was alluding to, there was that kind of like shock where we were locked down, and if you could find some way to make some money, then you had to, and you had to think outside of the box. You know, Sam's representing a company here, and I think absolutely thought outside of the box in terms of delivering the takeaways and that local service. But we've seen lots of businesses, really sort of traditional retail businesses, that have been really up their online offering. And some of them, and their delivery offering, and some of them have kept part of that going, and I think that will become a substantial part of their business model going forward as well. But we've also seen, as businesses have started to reopen or have been able to reopen, they've had to adapt their practices. And some of those practices are being adapted because it's a COVID-safe way to do it. So, for example, we're seeing less print around and more sort of digital, getting to the menu through digital means, or getting to leaflet information through digital means. And that, I think, is going to stay as well. Or I certainly think it's going to become part of the mix in a way that it probably wasn't there before. One of the things that I've been really interested in is how some of the businesses that maybe have much, let's say, for example, a bed and breakfast where the whole 1 metre, 2 metre thing was really challenging for them. What I'm starting to see, or have begun to see, is some business where they're offering the whole of the property rather than letting it out to different individual groups. And again, we might start to see some of that being longer stay. It's really challenging. I mean, we've got to be honest, there's some parts of the industry that for whom this just doesn't work at all. You know, if you're somebody who deals in weddings, if you're someone who deals in big group businesses, you know, in corporate tourism, it's really
event companies in general, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. You know, and I hear what you were saying, Colin, earlier on about the fact that a lot of businesses will have had a much better summer than they could have hoped for. But certainly, I'm really concerned that a lot of businesses haven't been able to generate as much money as they would, because let's not forget, they're always busy in the summer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But actually, our visitor economy, from our statistics, we've lost more than half the value of the visitor economy so far this year. So it is going to be a tough winter, and we've just got to stand by, do all we can, and come out bouncing, hopefully in 2021. What I will say, and I have to say, because I really mean this, is that the businesses have worked phenomenally hard. They didn't just sit on their hands in April, May and June. They adapted their businesses, not just to be able to operate, but to be able to operate in a COVID-safe way that put their customers, but also their staff and their communities first. And what they were absolutely adamant about is that would not be at the cost of the visitor experience. And our satisfaction levels, I'm really happy to say, from our latest visitor survey, compared to the one we did before visitors came back, people felt extremely satisfied, 93, 94, 95%.
Wow.
But also that they felt safer than they thought they would have felt. And that's a real testament to our businesses.
Sam,
So
the
Sam-
Simon Rogan at home thing that you put in place was obviously a fantastic innovation. Do you want to just talk about that briefly?
I would love to talk about that briefly. It was the backstory behind it is what I enjoy about how we got there. And I probably shouldn't say this on a recording, because in a few years' time, I'm going to tell people that it was really strategic and well thought out and planned. It just wasn't. It was just born from the only thing we know how to do, which is graft. Now, on day one of lockdown, when we were in that shock, we just looked at all the food we had, and some of which we could preserve in our usual methods, and some of which we couldn't. So on a very small scale, I'm talking about having 3 walk-in fridges worth of food. We said, well, we could make some like stews and stuff. The kind of thing we might make for our staff dinner, not stuff that would necessarily go out in the restaurant, but tasty nonetheless. And we could give some to the staff, and they could have some, because we were in that kind of 2-week mode we thought it was going to be. So we thought we'd give everyone some food back then. And then we had quite a bit of it. So I had a chat with the vicar, Nick the Vic, at Cartmore Priory, and he and I came up with an idea that he would probably know some people in the community that had fallen on hard times, more than I would anyway. So I said, well, look, I don't want to make this a sort of a situation where people have to kind of come begging for it. How about I just give you whatever you ask for and you distribute it, so there's no sort of odd hard feelings or anything like that. And that's what we did. And then someone got in touch with us. We heard about this, saying, well, we're doing some stuff with Age Concern in Barrow and the hospital there. We're doing like a pop-up market. Could we grab a bit? And absolutely. So we ended up buying food in to make all this stuff. And food off the farm was going into it. And it was great. So whilst we were all doing this, and I don't know whether this breaks any rules because we were doing this all off our own back, we were chatting and thinking, well, this is all very well, but what if we started a product that would make money enough to allow us to give these to charity? So I'm fairly confident that we broke a furlough rule there, but because we were strategizing on charity time, but it worked out. And the moment we started working for it, we brought a team back off furlough, and we created a takeaway, which was a £30 takeaway that's got sent to people's houses. And we got in, well, actually, Lakeside Taxis got in touch with us and said, do you need a logistics solution? So I said, I do, but not taxis. That's not quite, I mean, chauffeur driven was not part of the budget, really, chauffeur driven takeaway. So they actually bought some refrigerated vans, and we worked out a plan to be able to then send these out to the whole of the Lake District. But the problem was, at this point, we were still skint, because I said earlier, we went through the winter. So I couldn't pay a website designer. So I went on to Google and learned how to build a website. And that makes me sound a lot more intelligent than I am. It's quite easy, it turns out. There's templates on Squarespace and companies like that. And before you know it, it took 38 hours of no sleep, and we made a website that allowed people to click, order, have it delivered. And it went well, and we won Best Michelin Star Takeaway in the UK. And this goes on to the diversification. I think one thing that I've enjoyed seeing this year, and you've got to take the good. I'm not saying it hasn't been a bad year. It has been an awful year. You've got to take the good. Is the entrepreneurialism that it's brought out in me. It's brought out in other people. It's been exciting. People have seen opportunities to do things with their business that they wouldn't have done before. And the hard reality of it is, this is just an environment that we have to react to survive. Because if you don't, but I'm not. But the trouble is, it's a harder environment than people should have to react to, really. But yeah, so we did that. We did the takeaways, and that kept us going. And we swapped people around when the flexi furlough came in, so we had different teams doing things. And we started doing some work on our farm, and we made our farm a bit bigger. So we've got a bigger farm to work with now. But then the hardest thing really was when we came to open on July the 4th. I've spent the last 4 or 5 years working with Simon, opening restaurants in London, 2 in London, 2 in Hong Kong, and 1 in Windermere. And that was over the period of about 2.5 years. That was full on. But to open 3 restaurants on one day, I don't remember it, if I'm honest. I blacked out. It just, it was just hardcore. So that was pretty, I think for the industry, it was quite a boom. you know, like being thrown into cold water. Right, there you go, crack on. And the tough thing about our industry is, and certainly the part of the industry I work in, is we try to make everything feel effortless, you know, so that you walk into our restaurants and go, oh God, it's just so chilled out in here. And you're going, yeah, all right, yeah, sure, yeah. And it requires a huge amount of effort to make something look effortless. And so now we are just having more and more things put on us to try to create an effortless experience. And it's getting to the point where I think everyone feels like Atlas, you know, holding up so much to try and make it work. But I have to give so much credit to Simon and to Penny and to the team that we've got, my exec team in Tom Barnes, who recently very nicely went on Great British Menu and got semi-famous and filled up our restaurant. So cheers, thanks for that, Tom. And Chris, our financial controller, has been insane, and Thomas, our operations manager, you know, out of this world. And Florina, reservations, reservations, that's been one heck of a headache this year. I think good business is built on stability, being able to kind of go, okay, I've limited my variables. I've got my reservations in check. We've got the food ready. That's great. But when reservations are just going up and down like that, and they're having to react and think on their feet, if we are speaking publicly, I will put a message out there to the general public as well. Just remember that when it's been hard for you, it's been hard for everyone else. So hopefully if you people out there know who you are, call up our reception and decide to take your world's problems out on them, then I have to buy them chocolates to say sorry for the world. But yeah, so I got a bit of a rant there, but yes, we had a nice takeaway business. It went really well.
I have to say, Sam, we talked a moment ago about how exhausted some of the staff are and how people are kind of running low on energy. But actually, that service that you've delivered to Cumbrian people, food has become at the centre of everything, hasn't it? And
it's escapism, isn't it? It's that moment to forget.
Yeah, we really, really appreciate it.
I mean, and I'm the same. Whenever I go out anywhere, I just want to forget for a moment. And we're not saving lives in hospitality, but we do give people a bit of respite from the hardships of their life sometimes. So the Simon Rogan at Home was designed originally just to be over the lockdown period. We actually kept it going all summer, and we've just taken a break from it for a month because we've developed a Christmas version where we're going to create people's Christmas lunch. So a 5-course Christmas lunch to be sent out to people's homes. And if you want a really cheesy strapline, which we will not put on the box, is spend more time with your family and less in the kitchen. Now that is assuming you want that to happen, because some people might go, I'm in the kitchen for the next 6 hours, you guys argue in the living room. Yeah.
You've just explained something which I think is fantastic in terms of being innovative. On the mainstay restaurant side, though, how are you differing the way you attract custom? How do you market in these pandemic times?
I think that's a really, really good point, and it's where people need to look, because I think it's so easy as operators to get bogged down in your operation and forget that marketing, if you're not marketing correctly, then you're not bringing people in the first place. And it was actually a guy, Mike Bevins, that opened my eyes to that, who used to have Linthwaite House. And I have a thing every now and then where I take, oh, hello, Ben.
Welcome back, Ben.
I've learned to humour, to become more stoic in the face of, the joys.
For the listeners of this session, Ben Berry is now back in the room, in the Zoom room, and Sam is just answering a question on what is different about the way that they, at the restaurant group and Long Crew and Simon Rogan's business, how they attract custom and how they market their proposition. So I'm sure, Ben, you'll probably have something to say about this when Sam's given us a few sound bites.
So Ben, I was just saying that it was Mike Bevins, who you'll know, who got me around to the idea of it's all very well, working away in your restaurants, but if you're not marketing it properly and well, then you may as well not be doing it in the first place. And for me, right now, the principles of hospitality have not changed at all. Make people feel comfortable about coming to you, comfortable about entering your door, and then give them food and service that you've got a reason to believe in. Now, what has changed is what makes people comfortable. That's what's changed. So before, you know, they might be made to feel comfortable by the fact that, you know, there's a big sharing platter and you can eat sushi off you know, Ben's naked body. That might be what people wanted to come for. And now,
lots of people, yeah.
purely for social distancing reasons, it's not the thing. So advertising and making sure people are aware of your measures that you put in place. And I think that's been a big thing. So from day one, we were really loud about the fact that we were doing certain things. And it meant that, you know, we could see the information on our website. People go on, you know, they have a look on our website, and you see the pages they click on because you've got all those clever analytics on your website. And everybody's going to the COVID safety thing. It's not just a bit on the back of your website that you do because you're supposed to do it. Put it right at the front. Tell people what you're doing. Those measures are going to build confidence, and they will be the difference between someone coming to you or someone else. Not necessarily the price point either. You know, you could have two restaurants and one's more expensive, but if they're saying we're doing more for you, you will fill your seats better. So I think the biggest thing is for me having strong measures in place that are visible. Like beforehand, we would never go to a table with a bottle of sanitizer and a piece of paper and clean it in a canteen style, because someone will be like, oh, come on, this is a nice experience. What are you doing? Whereas now it's like, you're out, I'm cleaning. That's what I'm doing. I'm cleaning. You've got to showcase to people what you're doing. That gives them the confidence to feel comfortable, and then you can deliver your food and service.
What do you see here, Ben? Because you and the family are hugely innovative in the way that you go about your business development and marketing with the hotels. And what's different for you guys in attracting custom and bookings?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest challenges in this whole thing is that Sam's right. You need to make people comfortable, and that's the aim of the game. But I almost put customers into three camps because they have such disparate needs in terms of, you know, what's going to make them comfortable. We have you know, minorities on either end. That we have a minority that are horrified that there are other people that exist. They don't want anyone anywhere. You know, the restaurant should be just for them, and you know, it's hard to you know, make that person happy, and we do our best. And then you've got people on the far end that then don't think coronavirus is a thing at all, and they're unhappy that we're you know, coming to the table and wiping the table at all, or you know, why are these people wearing masks? You know, what's going on you know, here? Let me sit with my friends, and you know, why can't I have a party of you know, 18 people? Or you know, I read the guidelines, Mr. Berry. We're going to have a wedding. You know, I've got a bride and groom here. We're having a wedding. We're not having anything else. It is literally a wedding. It's not a social gathering, and we're going to pretend to have a wedding. So it's you know, it is tough, but the way we deal with that is the way we deal with any you know, any person that you know, has mismatched expectations. We try as best we can to tell them what they're going to get before they come, which is, to Sam's point, you know, making it clear what they can expect when you know, before they arrive, you know, how we're going to look after them, and how we're looking after where they're staying, you know, the specifications of what we're doing in the bedrooms, etc. And then meeting that when they get there, or exceeding you know, how friendly we are, despite the kind of clinical approach of the actual mechanics of what we're doing. We're still you know, a great friendly way of you know, spending time. But one of the key things within the industry is it's far easier for me to meet the expectations, satisfy and exceed those expectations of people that book direct with me, because I've got far more opportunity to have a conversation with them before they come to us. It's much harder with third parties, Booking.com, Expedia, etc., to because my COVID policy is on there, but it's hard for them to find. Sam says it's not, you know, how it is on my website. It's not the way that I want to present things, and so those guests have different expectations because I haven't been able to build the trust and have that conversation with them as a customer. Now, we're lucky that the majority of our guests are direct, and we have a lot of guests that have stayed with us before. But this crisis has had the silver lining in that there has been a lot of people from within the UK looking to stay in the UK that typically wouldn't. So we have had an influx of new people, and they've had different challenges and opportunities when when we've been dealing with others. But as Sam says, it's just doing more of what we already do, but making sure people are aware of it and doing it well.
I'd be curious to know, you mentioned something really, really well then, is the idea that the difference in expectations from guests based on their personal views. So whether some people are a little bit more cautious and some people are caution to the wind, and then there's the in-between, hopefully majority sort of thing. But why do you think there's such a variety in the way in which people are reacting to this crisis? And because it is manifesting itself quite clearly in our establishments as well, that there is, everyone's coming in with a different version of what they think they should have to do.
Yeah, and it's not just customers, our staff the same. We have members of the team that are upset that this is a thing, and don't think we should be doing anything about it. And then there are team members who are scared of coming into work, some for legitimate reasons and some for not so legitimate reasons, because as you know, the risks vary significantly depending on various risk factors. But why do I think that is? I think it's down to the very nature of humans and their feelings on liberty and trust and things like that. I think some people are far more skeptical, and unfortunately some people are skeptical of everything, regardless of how realistic or in the realms of truth it is, and some people believe everything, and so I think it comes down to that really. Some people are are watching the news all day every day and thinking that hundreds of thousands of people are dying in this country, and there's surveys that show that people a significant proportion of the population think the death count in the UK is into the hundreds of thousands, and so their risk, their knowledge of the risk is probably as low as the person that thinks it's nothing at all. And so I think it comes down to people's inherent bias within themselves as to do I believe the Tory government? Or do they not? Or do I believe the government at all? Or the person on the news said lots of people are dying, so I'm not going outside my house. And if I go to a restaurant, I'm upset that there's other people there. So, yeah, my view is it comes down to individuals believing things, and often, unfortunately, it's an entirely different conversation. It comes down to social media and where those rabbit holes take us as human beings. We click one link that is skeptical, and then Facebook pops up another one that's even more skeptical to try and keep us engaged, and become almost radicalized within their view of what coronavirus is. But as a business, all we have to do and all we can do is what you said, Sam, is keep delivering amazing products and services, keeping people safe as best we can, reassuring our staff that we're doing everything that we can and everything we should do within the guidelines and within the law. And hopefully people will respect that, and we'll get through as a profitable, successful business.
Yeah, something interesting that, Ben. Just moving on to working practices. Now, obviously, businesses have had to change quite significantly the way that they're interacting with their customers, the way that you keep people safe, etc. Are there things that have been put in place that you will actually keep beyond this pandemic that you've actually found were improvements to working practices?
There are certain things, like I think our environments have always been pretty clean, but it's made people more aware of this. The practices that are in place for, cleanliness are not just for a pandemic. The flu can come around every year and that sort of thing. So I think certainly just a reminder that, we should all stay very clean. And that one thing we've changed in the restaurants, for example, is we used to give cutlery with each and every course. And so for 3-course meals, that's okay. But if anyone's ever eaten a taster menu, or been to Long Gloom, they use sort of 15 to 20-course menus, and that means quite a lot of cutlery. So we highlighted this very quickly as a high-risk area. That is for want of a less or more romantic term, it's a mouth tool. So if you're picking up someone's mouth tool 15, 16 times a day per person, you know, that's a very high risk area. So we decided early on to go, here's your cutlery at the beginning of the meal that's been sanitized. We won't be taking that away. You just use that through your meal, and there's ways to keep it clean through your meal. And then we'll take it away once at the end of your meal. So, I mean, I don't know whether we will keep that exact practice, but it's certainly been an interesting way to remind us that they're dirty. You know, they've been in people's mouths and you don't know what's been going on. So a little reminder to people to keep themselves very, very clean. And hopefully something we've learned from our Hong Kong operation is that they were more hygiene conscious before the pandemic started than the UK's been throughout this pandemic, because they've been through these things before and they've learned from them. So please don't sort of edit this in a way that makes it sound like we were all just, you know, licking each other in the restaurant before and had no health conscious whatsoever. But I certainly think, you know, the level of how much people are using antibacterial and that sort of thing is good. We made a couple of small changes in the restaurant that ensured that people were comfortable. We built some walls in the restaurant, and they're probably going to stay. So rather than putting something really obvious in the restaurant, we wanted to still feel normal. So in the old blacksmith, which is a 14th century building, we built some walls between some of the tables that looked like they were part of the original building. And so people come in, sit down, think, oh, this is nice, comfortable, no one's around me, great. And actually there's fake walls everywhere, but no one knows until the BBC came and filmed it and told everyone, which kind of screwed us a little bit for keeping that secret. But so those things I think we'll keep. The general cleanliness that's been improved, that was already good before, but has been improved. And the walls. I think those are the two things for us really.
Yeah. Ben, have you got anything you want to just add onto that?
And it's an interesting question, because it's I take it in two parts, because there's what we want to continue doing and there's what we may end up having to continue do depending on how much this scars the psyche of the general population. And Sam mentioned a good point there that the Far East, having lived through SARS version 1 and various other terrible outbreaks, it did scar them. That has kept so many people over there wearing masks most of the time, through either politeness or through a wish not to, through fear or whatnot. But so there are things that we may have to do because they're demanded by our consumers. But things that we'd like to do. I mean, there's things. I remember only 1 year ago being laughed out of a meeting for suggesting that we should have set times, as in bookable slots for breakfast, to try and deal with capacity issues, because everyone turns up at 8:30 or even later, and by having bookable slots we can manage it. And they said, oh no, customers would never want that, it's horrendous, and it wouldn't even work for us anyway then. And now the general managers think it's the best thing ever invented, and breakfast is fantastic, and it's plated and it's brought to them, and they just, it's a much better way of us delivering breakfast. The guests prefer it, we prefer it, and it's better product. So that's one area. But one of the key ones that I think is something that I need to develop for myself and the rest of the executive is we've almost got a manic sense of survival. We need to keep, we're doing everything we can to make our business as successful and profitable as possible right now, because we're in a heightened battle mode, of getting through this. And it's easy, no one's ever complacent, but you can easily, just chill out, sometimes, and really we need to keep this energy and focus on, how can we, what products can we develop that, the next generation of guests are looking at, what can we do to make sure people spend as much with us when they're with us, and how can they have the best time possible, and all these small things that have come to the top of the pile. They were probably in the pile before, but they've come to the top because we have this kind of sink or swim, and we're swimming really fast right now, and we're doing everything we can, and I'm conscious that we could lose that if things go back to normal and we can just have a leisurely paddle, when really we want to be pushing as hard as we can. We've Cumbria as a whole has done so I'm going to say so well. People have been coming here that haven't come here before, and we want them to come back in the future and enjoy. And so it's capturing that energy and capturing that view of people within the United Kingdom that it is an amazing place to come and stay, play, and eat and drink with us.
Jeremy, do you want... really interesting point there, Ben, where you said about how we're sink or swim with survival, and I could not agree with you more on that. And I have a bit of a sort of long-term fear though, and something we're trying to do now is speaking openly, and it would be interesting to see your thoughts on this. Normally, if you look at the whiteboard I have in my room and all the things that we're thinking about at once, there's really lovely and interesting things, product development, strategy, staff development, big ones, succession planning, promotions and all those kind of things, and a lot of HR based things which are trying to keep our staff engaged and happy and moving forward. And now it's really, like you say, it's survival and profit. And those are the two things, because cash is king, you need it. And so my fear, and what I'm trying to shift the focus back to now, and it's hard because we are still in survival mode, is the idea of, right, we still need to keep our eye on the ball of managing our teams and promoting them from within and getting them growth and their plan for the next 3 years in their jobs, because they need that. We're sitting there in our room tearing our hair out going, okay, we've got to make sure the bank's okay. But they're not. Their mind is focused on what's my future. And I think the past few months, I've taken my eye off the ball on that and now need to return myself to it. And I just wondered whether that was something that was how that's changed with you as someone with such a massive amount of responsibility.
Yeah, that's it's spot on, and one of the other things that I don't want to lose and I want to carry on is cross training of staff. We've been able to utilize staff across a wider proportion of the business than we normally would, and that training and that utilization is great, and it will pay dividends in the future. But yeah, on the kind of executive capacity to look after all aspects of the business, one of the things that I've been that I've almost meditated on over the lockdown period was how I needed to ensure that I was taking that strategic view rather than being involved in every small little thing, and I've made a conscious effort to ensure that I delegate, make sure that some things I don't need to be involved in, and so my whiteboard has, to use your phrasing, the whiteboard has got less things on now. I am purposefully concentrating on certain things, and it doesn't mean that we're not developing the team or doing all the things that might have been on there before. It's just that I need to focus on certain things, and I need to make sure that other people are focusing on those. It doesn't necessarily have to be me.
Seems that the sale of whiteboards in Cumbria might have done quite well over the last few months. We'll just move on to the final question, which is to do with the government support mechanisms that are in place. Now, I know everybody will have quite strong views on different elements of this, and we'll try and keep this relatively short because I suspect it could go on for a very long time. Does anybody want to, Tom, do you want to just give us a view on what your thoughts on the mechanisms that have been there, how they've been for you, and potentially what you would like to see there if you had your own crystal ball?
I think in all fairness to the government here, where although I was quick to criticise earlier on some of the lack of clarity of some of the measures they put in place, the financial support, which is essentially a lot of what we're talking about here, really, because the support mechanisms are mostly financial. I think they've reacted quickly. I think they've reacted clearly and firmly, and I think they've done an incredible job and gone beyond the means that I would have expected. I was blown away, really, by how much they were able to support. And it's all very easy to say yes, but that doesn't apply directly to me or directly to someone else. They had to create something quickly that would look across the length and breadth of the business industries in the country And I take my hat off to them. You know, I absolutely blown away with how they did that so quickly. And inevitably, because of how quickly they had to do it, you can then look back with hindsight and go, oh, but it was open here and open there. But I, as a general rule, thought that when we first went into lockdown, they did a really good job. The furlough scheme, we've never really seen anything like it in the UK, and I think it's fair to say that a lot of hospitality industries would be, the hospitality businesses, sorry, would not be still standing without it. I think we may have just scraped through, but it wouldn't have been pretty. So I think, you know, tip my hat to them on that. The loans, we chose not to take use of ourselves, but I completely see how they were there, and I didn't have experience. You said, Colin, sometimes it was difficult for people to get them quickly enough, but we took the view where we were going to try our best to not come out of this with a big loan hanging over our head, because inevitably you just have to pay it back. But if we would have had to take it, we would have taken it, and that would have been our route to survival. Now, I think, yeah, I mean, it can't go on forever. It'd be great if it could for everyone, I'm sure, but it can't go on forever. We haven't really been using it since reopening. In fact, we haven't been using it since reopening because we're open and we're busy. But there are some sectors we were talking about earlier, event sectors, things like that. I'm sure it's pretty crucial. The new scheme that they've announced, I think is, yeah, definitely designed around not just having people hanging out on furlough. It's designed around getting them into work a little bit more, which is good. I think that's important. I mean, it's great to say, oh, well, why can't they just keep the furlough scheme going forever? Because they can't, because they just can't. So I don't know. I think, is it sufficient? Maybe not over the winter, depending on how it goes. But I don't think they could do a lot more, if I'm honest with you. And as far as improvements that they could make to those schemes, I mean, the VAT's been a huge thing for hospitality, and for a long time now, hospitality has been battling for a VAT scheme similar to that around the rest of Europe, which does support hospitality better, because the margins are. People think that restaurants just make money. They're mad. They're mad. But they don't know this. They don't. And they go. I mean, I have people approach me, maybe more, saying, "Hey, do you want to take over our restaurant?" And go, "Well, why do you want us to do it, not you?" "Oh, it's, you know, staff costs are high and it's difficult to maintain GP and make any profit." That's not going to be any different for me at all. So the margin, if people think restaurants are a road to success, they're not. And I will bore you to death on hours on the psychology behind why I believe people open restaurants. But I think, you know, it would be great to see that VAT extension further and be maintained. I think that would be a lifeline that many hospitality industries would really feel was a great change. And of course, the rates as well, the business rates. I think they're going to have to kick those back in. I'm pretty confident. But VAT, I think that could be something that would save the industry a little bit. I don't know how you feel, Ben.
Yeah, so I firstly two really good points you made on the VAT. The VAT is massive, really big, and yeah, as you say, it's been a long campaign, you know, for it to be a thing that happens all the time, you know, that, and you know, when rebounding from this crisis, you know, hospitality is well placed to employ more people, and if they want us to do that, you know, the VAT support would be a great way to allow us to bounce back and bring people back across the country. This is in greater numbers. On the CBIL loans, we did take one, and it's one of those sad stories where big businesses get it a lot easier than small businesses. You know, we have a great relationship with our bank, and I think it took 18 hours from signing the form to getting the money in for us. And then you've got small businesses that were struggling to even get an appointment to talk about it. And unfortunately, that often happens with you know, government intervention or regulations. You know, it does tend to affect larger players better than you know, smaller. But there's some. Was that your dog, Sam, agreeing with me? That was Jamie's. So, but on the you know, on the scale and breadth of the intervention and my feelings on it, I do have almost 3 separate views: personal, professional, and political views on it. And I'm happy to go over all of them. Professionally, fantastic support, especially as we said, the VAT, the furlough, unprecedented support, and we simply wouldn't have the number of employees we have right now if that scheme hadn't come about. The business rates again was helpful in some respect, but yeah, that VAT was huge, and the furlough, and of course that it continues now. Obviously, with the new scheme, it does shift a lot of the cost back onto us. We're having to make different decisions in different parts of the business about how we deal with that. But obviously there is that bonus, into the fourth quarter for us next year with the job retention bonus. But yeah, politically, he had to do it. There wasn't much choice. And glad that he took those decisions and was able to act fast and essentially combine the Treasury and the Bank of England into a machine that can support the country. My worry, and this kind of segues into my personal, but one of my political worries is that socialism, corporate socialism, it's incredibly hard to undo. You can see it now that the opposition get unhappy with anything he does because it doesn't go far enough, and anytime he tries to unwind anything, people get upset because it's being taken away from them. And so he's playing a really hard game now of trying to, and he's done it with the furlough, transitioning to this scheme of trying to wean business off, and he can't sustain jobs that aren't there anymore forever. And the same with zombie companies or companies that have taken on too much debt. He can't keep them going forever, and that kind of segues into my personal view. And I'm of the Austrian school, and we're going to pay for this in inflation or in higher taxes or something at some point. And it is a scary picture there in the kind of monetary fiscal world, because the chickens have to come home to roost at some point.
Can I ask your opinion of the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, Ben?
Sure.
What's your opinion of the Eat Out to Help Out?
So when it first came out, I was like, wow, this is weird and wonderful, and we'll have to see. And my view, a professional view at the time, was I can't wait for this. We're going to we'll get set up. I had colleagues within the business that said, Ben, we don't need to do this, we're busy enough now, when in those final weeks just prepping to get to it. But what it did was a few really important things. It got I was talking about that varying view of people on being scared of the virus. It kind of got those maybes out of the house and into a restaurant, and it got them to experience it and see that it was safe and that it was okay. And if they didn't have that, they may well be in home still being worried now. They might not have ventured out. I think it gave an inducement or incentive at least to those people to say, let's go and have dinner. The other thing that it did that was great is that some more so than us, but to us certainly, is that we're aspirational brands. Yeah, so not everyone can afford to come and eat dinner with us or have lunch with us or stay with us. And what it did is it allowed people to experience something that they wouldn't normally have been able to do. And what we hope is that now they've got a taste for it, that they're going to allocate their savings accordingly in the future. They're going to save up, and they're going to go, yeah, you know what, Long Clean was the bomb. It was so good, it was so amazing, and we want to be back there and go again.
I'll give you that $5 later. Thank you, Ben.
Exactly. So we they tried it, and they think, you know what, for my birthday, special occasion, for the people that can't go regularly, they're going to say, we had the opportunity to try it, we got a discount, and yeah, professionally, I think it was a well intentioned, and it worked out well for us scheme. Yeah.
That's great. I think you're absolutely right. I love the idea of it kind of bringing people out and tempting them and coaxing them and ensuring that, building that confidence. It was a double-edged sword, wasn't it? Because you got them out, and then they blamed us for everyone being out, and now we're getting battered for it. And I also have this is a longer standing qualm with discount schemes, because I think I don't think people realise how much it costs to make food and to serve food and that sort of thing. and sat here briefly, just very quickly, I put together a breakdown. I've done this before, and this isn't very detailed, and you can probably pick it apart. But if someone went out for a £24 lunch pre sort of COVID, £24 lunch, and we're going to say, and you can have a go at my pricing here. I've made this up on the spot. A glass of wine for £6 because they're treating themselves to a nice lunch. A soup for a £5. A stroganoff. I don't know why I said stroganoff, but a stroganoff for £13. And a tap water for £0. That's £24. I don't think that's an unreasonable pricing structure for a lunch. And out of that, let's say it takes you neck and 2 hours to have your lunch in a restaurant. You're looking, so you want a waiter. You definitely want a waiter at your beck and call. So for 2 hours, a waiter, a personal butler that's there every time you put your hand up. People think, forget about wage costs in the UK, that you add on the pension, you add on the national. I know you, Ben, will know all about this. You add all this on, your minimum you're charging for a waiter is just over the £10 mark, the cost to us. Let's say you rent your restaurant, £5 a month. You work that table out, that's about £2 per service, or per person, in fact, for a 40 cover restaurant. That was a £5 a month, open 30 days a month. For £5,000 means each table for 40 guests would mean about £2 per guest. And then your cost of sales, assuming 50%-ish. So it comes to £37.90 that would cost to make that. So then that's why I wouldn't describe you as an executive as you refer to yourself, Ben. I'd describe you as a magician, because the ability to turn that around, I fear the general public doesn't always understand the cost that goes into it. And there was a chef, I didn't bother putting them in. Let's assume they were doing it off their own back. So I think that's the key thing. To my worry is that we're going to get back into a discount culture, and actually maybe the industry needs to take hold of itself a bit more and say, if you want someone to wait on you and serve you and cook for you and clean for you and put masks on for you, and if you want that all to be brought to you, yeah, it's not cheap. So it'd be interesting to see if people do take that aspirational view and go, do you know what, I'm going to have less, cheap things. I'm going to go for that one really nice meal at the Blue Smoke, which is a lovely place to eat. That sort of thing.
£5 back there. But yeah, that is a really key point. That discounting does devalue brands, and but as I say, on balance, I think it worked out well. But it is something that we have to watch out for, and I do wonder how often people are able to discount food and drink so heavily. Even just we don't use any. For lunch and dinner, we don't use any third-party distribution, but some people do, and they're paying 15-20% commission on that. And I think, well, are you making any money then? Where is your actual margin coming from? If you're giving them 20%, it's tough to
and of
get.
Course they have these companies that you're referring to, which will remain nameless. They have quite a big margin to spend on marketing. So they then say to everyone, look, the only way to get a table is through us. And so eventually create a sort of monopoly with the booking systems, that you sort of have to go through them to get tables in the restaurant. Because it just becomes a culture, doesn't it? They go, oh, where am I going to eat? Don't. There you go, that's where I'm going to go. And then you're right, they're parasites, quite frankly.
Well, I'm going to rein you all in because the clock. And I've been sat here listening to you guys, which, to be honest, I could do all day. You're so good at what you do in your respective businesses. It'd be churlish of me, though, not to finish on what we heard last night. And we're on the morning of the 13th of October. Last night itself, Boris made the announcement of the three-tiered approach. So if I could ask you, for one sentence in terms of your response to what we heard last night, I'll give you a bit of a prompt from my perspective. I think there was an element of us feeling geared up for something that was going to be a bit more draconian and a bit more a la March than it was last night. I do agree with the tiered approach. I just hope that the transmission rate reduces so that other parts of the Northwest, be it Lancashire and South Lakes or Cumbria, aren't hampered in the same fashion. But what would you say from what you heard last night from Boris and Rishi's announcement?
Can I start, Jamie?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the the big concern is the impact of the restrictions on people's ability to actually travel into the county. It's not really that clear at the minute, I don't think, how easy it is for people to travel from Liverpool, for example. I think the guidance said something like it was advised against. So I don't know how different people will take that. And you can't help but thinking over the next few months, there's a likelihood that other areas might fall into it. And I think most of the visitors that come into the county probably travel, a couple of hours at the most, so, northeast, northwest, perhaps southern Scotland, they're the areas where the restrictions potentially seem likely over the next couple of months. So that will be the challenge, I think.
Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll have to. I'm going to slightly bite my tongue, but essentially, I've got to the point where I've almost stopped caring what they say. I only care about what I can do with what they've said, because they're gonna, there's no way I can stop them or influence what they're going to say. They come up with weird and wonderful things that we hear about, sometimes at the drop of a hat. This one was well briefed, as you say, but really I've almost, as I say, stopped caring so much on what they say. It's digesting it and saying what do I have to do now because of what they've said, because I've got to the kind of point in my stoic life where that's all you can do. You just can't you can't get upset or overjoyed with what they say. You just have to say, how am I going to best use this opportunity to survive and thrive given the situation.
Sam, in closing.
I think you're absolutely right, Ben. I agree with you completely. It's what can we do for our businesses, our staff, and our guests that come in to react. I'm not a member linked directly to any political party, so I can go a bit further than that. And I can say, I think, and I get the position you're in, mate, I really do. But I think it was a bit of a letdown, if I'm honest. It's people's lives we're talking about, but it's also the economy. I'm not one to generally criticise the government in situations like this, because they are just people, and we four here are just people, and we all have so much that we can take. And there's a reason why politicians start their stints in power with brown or blonde hair and end it with grey, because, and it's not something I would want to put myself through. But I do think in this case that it needed a little bit firmer guidance, personally. I think it's not really changed anything from the way we're going to operate at all. Maybe slightly shift the marketing, but that's about it.
Mm.
Well, chaps, that concludes our brief conversations for this morning. I'd like to thank you so much for your time. As ever, insightful, enthusiastic, and useful, and I hope our listeners enjoy it.